Welcome to this week's Developer Skill Sprint. Here is JSON, the new INI file. Hi, my name is Jeff Lefebvre. I am the lead software developer at Skyline Aviation Software. You can contact me at staff@thedailydeveloper.com, and I have the following Twitter accounts: Pascal Coder and Delphi Tips. Today is August 21st, 2014, and let's get right to it. This skill sprint works with all of these platforms: Windows, OS X, Android, iOS, and it works with the IDEs Rad Studio and App Method, and it is in Object Pascal. You could use it with C++ with the little change of the language, but for this specific sprint, I'm just going to cover it in Object Pascal. Why use JSON over INI? Well, it just works. You simply add the property to your class, and then it just works when loading and saving to file. You may need to add some additional setting logic to make it work for specific types, but for most properties, it will just work out of the box. Because it is class property agnostic, it is automatically more maintainable. As long as you're using the same types, adding one property to your settings class automatically completes all other code in setting, loading, and saving to the database. Finally, JSON is better over INI files because it is more expressive. You can structure the settings however you like, and JSON will automatically parse that data and save it to file or load from file. Here I will discuss the differences between INI files and JSON files, and I will also discuss the advantages JSON has over INI files. As most of you are aware, INI files are settings grouped into one or more sections. So in this case we have main settings, then we have some settings of general settings, and then we have some theme settings. This is just an example. So we have background color, foreground color, button click, and we have a few settings here in the main settings. So if we were to develop these settings into our application, what we would need to do is, first off, create the properties here: license key, server password, server name, and then we would add it to a service handler dot load settings, and it would return an instantiated class of T configuration settings. So we've got license key, server password, and server username. The problem with this is that there is tight coupling in this method to the object that is being used. So if we were to have to add another property to configuration settings, we would then have to go into here and then add additional logic to support it. For example, if we were to add a new property called modified on, property modified on, and then we'll have it as a date time, we will press Control-Shift-C to autocomplete the property. So we have our modified on date time, and then we would have to add it to this load settings method, otherwise that setting would never get loaded. So we'll have to add result.modified on equals ini.read date time. Same section, so I got to go here, paste this here. Whoa. Then I got to take this modified on here, paste it there, and then have a default, and I'll have it as date time. Well, just now. There it is. There. Oh, apparently that's not a valid thing. Interesting. Sysutils. I need to add sysutils. So I'd have to add prerequisites for specific methods so I can even add these things in here. Should be now. Alright. And it compiles. Okay, so that is adding one setting. Now what if we were to add groups of settings within groups, or adding arrays of settings within a specific element? INI files simply doesn't support it. The most you could do is to, let's say if we were to have server hosts, we would have to have a comma delimited string. So we would have IP1, IP2, IP3, and then what you need to do is take that in and then have special handling in this load settings method to take it in, parse it out, then populate the array. A lot of hard work for a single setting. Now, here is an alternative. I'm going to suggest JSON. Most of you are aware of JSON as a way of communicating data between a web server and a web client. However, JSON has an additional function that isn't in widespread use, and that is used for configuration. You could take this object and then place it onto the database, or onto file as a configuration, and you'll be able to easily load it into memory. For example, to convert this into JSON is actually a negative amount of code. I need to replace any files with rest.json, JSON, and then take these 4 lines of code and this here, right? And this even. That's all gone. All of this is gone. And replace it with result equals tjson dot JSON to object. And then here we populate our string. So I would have to just create a quick little tstring list loader. Super quick. I created this before. Replace any file with that. I guess we'll have to add classes. And then replace with paramstring.ini. And then we take our strings.text, and then we will free the strings. And finally, we pass the tconfiguration settings type into the JSON to object generics method, and then that is it. These 6 lines of code are all that we need to do to this to load the configuration into memory. Next, we will add value arrays and embedded settings, features that ini files cannot support. First, we will add a server host property that will be an array of string. I have done this ahead of time, so I'm just going to paste this in. It's a pretty much standard get server host, set server host, then your server hosts array property. We'll make it from 0 to 5. Then we will just change this to public so it will support array properties. And there we go. And then that's it. We just run it. And there we go. So before we continue, we're just going to print out the settings so we can actually see the data. So I'm just going to quickly add a tlist box. So we will just start this up. We'll get another error. What we need to do is just add a check to see if the file exists. Like that. Of course, it suggests that you use a constant, so you can do that if you wish. So what we need to do is, if the file doesn't exist, we need to instantiate a blank object. Here we go. So no settings anywhere. But if we were to save these settings, and then we would have a file to edit. So what I'm going to do is add a save settings method, and I'm just going to copy from a template for the sake of time. There we go. Saved a file. Also takes in a file path. So what I will do is just add a button. I'll call it save. And all this will do is it will take our object and save it to file. There. Now let's take a look and see what it actually created. Alright, so then we have our jsonlive.exe.json. We'll drag that into Delphi and see what it looks like. Here we have license key, server password, server username, modified on, server hosts, and there is our array of hosts. So we can actually just go in and edit these things like that. 10, 11, 12. And there we go. Now if we save it and load it up, see that nothing is there. Brilliant. We will then have to change .ini to .json, so the file will load. And then there you are. There is our 6 settings that we added 0 to 5. 6 elements. And if we were to go in here and change our password, change our key, change our server name, username, there we are. Very, very simple. Modified on, that is a date time formatted for Delphi specifically. So if we were to go and put 321, 321, that probably is not a valid date, but 31321.5, and then we were to add that to our list box, put it right at the top. there you are. October 1st, 1985. Alright, so that is how you would add an array of strings. Now, having embedded settings. It's pretty simple actually. All you have to do is have another type inside as a property inside of this configuration settings. So for the sake of time, I've created it already. We'll just do Control-Shift-C to autocomplete, and then we will add our T configuration settings theme as a property. Now we will never overwrite it, so we are going to take out set, and we also have to construct, we have to instantiate the theme when the T configuration settings gets instantiated. Like so. Should also add a destructor for when this object gets freed, but for the sake of time I'm not going to do that. So we will save our JSON. We'll take a peek at it. And here we have the new theme settings. What we did in this demonstration is we migrated the any settings method from using any files to using JSON files. We removed the coupled code per property, and then as a result, the load settings is now completely agnostic to the settings class properties. Afterwards, we added complex structures to our settings class. We added an array of strings, and then we added an embedded class within our settings class. To conclude why JSON works better for your application than any, it just works out of the box. For basic data types, date, time, integer, strings, you can just put that in there and it will work for you automatically. It is class property agnostic. You do not need to add specific lines for specific properties for most types. For certain types such as memory streams, or you wanted to manage, let's say, pictures or other specific types that aren't natively supported by JSON, you may need to add a couple of methods to handle those specifically, but those are not property specific. Those are type specific. JSON leaves your application more maintainable. You do not need to worry about adding lines of code to specific parts of the program to support specific properties. Finally, it is more expressive. You do not need to structure your application to fit your settings. You structure your settings to fit your application. For the code samples in this skill sprint, simply go to thedailydeveloper.com/skillsprint14-JSON. If you wish, you can go to the doc wiki tutorials on Embarcadero site, or you can look at some additional blog posts at thedailydeveloper.com. My name is Jeff Lefebvre. This has been the new ini file developer skill sprint. You can contact me at stamp@thedailydeveloper.com.
John is asking, does this JSON, using JSON, only work with exe6 or?
I was actually using exe5 in that demo.
exe5, okay, yeah. So whenever the JSON support, but there are JSON libraries as well. I mean, all over the place. So, John, if you have an older version of Delphi or our products,
course, there are.
Oh, you're breaking up, Jeff. Go ahead. Try again. Maybe the Starbucks is busy.
Yeah. There's actually libraries going all back to Delphi 6, but
Yep.
Delphi, I think Delphi XC2 now does it natively.
Yep. XZ3. Scott was asking about XZ2. Scott, you'll probably have to find, again, there are JSON libraries supporting Delphi going way back. Let's see. Bish asks if there's a utility to convert INI file to JSON. I don't know of any. Have you found any, Jeff, to convert an INI file? Otherwise, you write code with use TINI file and write a simple program that would read your INI file and create the JSON. But have you seen any utility?
Yeah, I wonder if he's talking about the code or just the result file.
Well, he just says utility. He doesn't say source code, so.
Like a tool to convert code that writes to INI files to code that writes to JSON.
Or to some utility that reads an INI file that you have and pulls out the keys and values and dumps it into JSON format.
I'd be kind of interested to see how many settings he has in that INI file.
Yeah.
INI file. But yeah, no, I don't know of any tools.
Yeah. Again, it's not hard to use TINI file to read strings and so on from an INI file using the methods, and then to call JSON.
For sure. You'll as you're making your method to use JSON, all you'd have to do is create an extra method that's to keep your load INI file, but then just create JSON, and then there you'd have your migration path.
Yep. Robert's asking, is there a way to provide default values if you're using JSON versus INI?
Well, the way the library way the system works is, if it can't find the JSON element, it will not populate the class element. So if you populated the constructor with your defaults, you'll have your default settings.
Marco's asking, if we add a new property that is not present in the JSON file, for example, a previous version of our app, does the load fail?
No, it will just be whatever the default value is, as you specify in your constructor.
All right, Fred's
likewise, if there's elements in the JSON that can't be found in the class, it will just not fill in. It won't populate anything.
Okay, Helga's mentioning the page with the sample code and is missing an image. Okay, well, maybe Jeff can look at sample code, yeah. Okay, then there's a question about, I missed this one. Let's see, hold on. Think about, go. Oh, here, I have to scroll up, sorry. Is there JSON built-in support for generic collections? Assuming contained types are supported, question mark. Christopher is asking.
I don't know if it uses generics that deeply. It just uses the generics to determine what type to use, and then it populates the fields inside the object. Okay. So if you had lists, or I'm not too sure about lists, but if you had arrays inside of the object, it will automatically fill in the array. But beyond that, it doesn't get much more deep than that as far as implementation goes.
All right, I'm just trying to type the terse answer. They're recording this over in the other room anyway. Okay, let's see.
I do have to admit I'm relatively new to generics, so those are terms I'm not too familiar with.
Yeah, there's the collections like T-dictionary, was a T-hash table, T-list, and TQ, I think, was the other one, or the 4 collections. that
If JSON supported it, you would have to perhaps look at instantiating it, like the actual object. I ran into that with that embedded object. It didn't automatically create the object for me. I had to actually create the object myself, and then JSON would observe it. So if you're to investigate that, just keep that in mind.
let me just somebody was making a comment about the DocWiki link that is on the page, so I'm gonna get back to it.
Oh, okay. Maybe my
I think it's Rad Studio exe6/en on the end of I'll put that in the question answer queue. That's the real link. It's radstudio/exe6/en for English and leave it that, or you can put main_page, and then if you want other language versions, change the en to like frjp probably. Okay. Let's see. Can we easily parse arbitrary JSON with the built-in libraries for formatting purposes? Easily parse arbitrary JSON.
perhaps not necessarily associated to an object. There is a tool online, and I think Delphi may also have one, that just allows you to view a JSON file. Just look for JSON viewer, and it'll take your JSON file and it'll present it in a nice readable format.
Okay. Let's see. You found Vish found a Python script to convert INI to JSON. So I'll say thanks and put that in the. Everyone will see the link show up in the question answer log. Let's see. Christopher saying, I currently have a few examples of some write-only properties written to config files, but can't be read from the config file calculated properties. Can the built-in JSON system support the concept of calculated values?
Well, what I found out after the webinar is that it doesn't actually look at the properties. It actually looks at the values with the F letter in front. So it kind of mimics a property. So it totally ignores all properties, and it just looks at the field values, fields that have a prefix of F. So it would ignore that property.
Okay. Okay. Just a comment about Christian's.
I think it responded to that. At Showstopper, you could actually save the calculated result to a value, to a field, and then you could save it. And then have a constructor, not a constructor, but have a read that would read that value if it exists, otherwise calculated.
Oh, and here's JSON viewer stack. Robert Lawrence has the JSON viewer.stack.hu. That's in the queue, in the question area. Bruce is saying,
it's pretty.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, I use that. It's pretty nice.
Bruce, a fellow Canadian, was saying, poor connection. That's what you get for going to Starbucks instead of Tim Hortons. Oh God, here we go.
Well, my wife works here, so I kind of get free coffee.
Okay. All right. Hey, there's a purpose. Okay. Let's see. What about make a JSON version of FireDAC connection decks INI? Oh, yeah, good suggestion. Because right now, FireDAC has INI files for the database definition and some driver information, and we had that in DB Express as well, INIs, but maybe JSON's the right way. I think that's most of it. Let's see. Lots of kudos. Thank you for a great presentation. Nicely presented. Carson has one. Let's see. Is it possible to get rid of the count in the resulting JSON string when I use enumerable.subproperties? An open array would be nicer to work with, included by the square brackets in JSON. I don't know if you see that question in the queue. Like Karsten. was at 6:29.
I'm looking for it.
Yeah, 6:29 a.m. on my received Q&A on 4th day. Tom saying, I just started using JSON with an app tethering app per Jim McKeith's skill sprint. Looking forward to give it a shot for this as well. Cool. Can you explain class function?
A class function is like a static method in C#, where you don't need to instantiate the class to access a method. There's a couple drawbacks to it where you can't access variables within the class, but you get the benefit of not having to instantiate it every time you want to access something. It works for stateless methods where you don't have to hold data regarding the state. So let's say you don't have to worry about certain variables in memory, such as a connection or a username or password. You don't have to worry about that. So it works pretty well with service handlers like the settings handler.
Okay, when editing, Winston's asking, when editing, how do you jump so quickly to the uses and then back to location and code you were working?
Oh, Control-Shift up. It lets you toggle between the implementation and the definition.
Up and down arrow, yeah.
Well, actually, it doesn't matter what you do. It always toggles.
Yep. Yep. That's right. Okay. Let's see. Tom asks, I noticed that the JSON class interpretation process assumes the F convention for naming the private data members of the classes. I'm guessing this is configurable?
I have not done much research into it because it is direct from Embarcadero's internal code. I suppose you could override some methods. You can actually dive into it, and then it's all overridable. I have not done so myself.
And by the way, everyone, the Rad Studio homepage is, you need to add a, here, let me do this again. You just need to add a exe6/en/main page. Let me, and I'll get the links in. I don't know if you've done any blogs on the topic, Jeff, or not.
I'll check if I posted a link to that, and I'll also mention that. Could you just post in a question so I can paste it?
Yeah, oh, sorry. Here, okay. So you'll see Dante as a, should show up in the question area. I forget what time it was. Robert is saying, perfect timing for me, thanks. Let's see. Is there any advantages of JSON over XML?
No. JSON has less text, less file size. But that's the benefit of JSON over XML.
Richard is saying, sheer brilliant work. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, C++ builder examples to use JSON. Go to the doc wiki. There's, let's see.
Yeah, there must be a C++ version of that method. And the actual handler itself is relatively simple. It's the idea of doing it this way is the purpose of this skill sprint.
Yep. Okay. Back here. Just a reminder, everybody, I'm caught up as of Tuesday on the skill sprints replays, so including Nick Hodges, and I'll get this one up ASAP. Okay. Let's see. Question, is this JSON class inbuilt, or do we need to install any third-party components?
This is native to Delphi. Rest.json.
We were trying to figure out which versions this unit was included in. I know exe5 and exe6. You were saying maybe back to exe3?
Possibly.
Okay, yeah. I'll have to look as well.
But if it's not in there, there's plenty of libraries that'll handle it. I've found one that works for all the way back to Delphi 6. It's not as intuitive. It doesn't have generics, of course, but you can do it.
Yep.
I think the key part of it is the RTTI because it iterates through all the fields.
Yep.
So, yeah.
Stefan Nyland was saying super object maybe works for early. Okay, thanks, Stefan.
XE5, the demo project on my blog is actually an XE5.
Where would I find your blog?
thedailydeveloper.com.
Oh, that's, okay, let's go to, there's a question here about what to use JSON other than in INI files. JSON is used in a lot of REST service applications, and our REST client components can parse the JSON and even send it to a data set. So take a look at the REST client library components that's started in XE5 and they're included in XE6.
Yep, that's the original intention of JSON.
Yep. And there's a REST debugger, so you know, that's a good thing. Or you can just work with JSON and do something with it. You may have your own data feeds and things of that kind. So, yeah.
Thanks for coming out, guys.
Okay, Jeff, take care.
Yep.
And bye, everyone.